Hello and welcome to Fork in the Road. My name is Rusty Gaylord. I am your host and happy to have you with us. Fork in the Road is a conversation with interesting, successful, smart trailblazers who are out doing cool things in the world. And we have an opportunity to look at how they got to this place and then to dive deep into some of the lessons and some of the principles that they have used and continue to use to create success. Today we have Dr. G, Deborah Gilboa, who is with us, and she is a practicing medical doctor, as well as a speaker and a trainer and a coach on resilience and how to use resilience and cultivate resilience in the workforce and in your life. So very happy to have Dr. G with us today. She has been on the Today Show, Good Morning America. She's all over the place, and so you may have seen her, but I'm really happy to have you here with us today. Welcome.
I'm really glad to be here too, Rusty. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's start with Fork in the Road from your experience. And one of the ones I just find so interesting. Yeah, there've been a couple. I know we've had the chance to talk about it, but one of the ones I find so interesting is the fact that you started, after college, you went and got a job in theater and in improv, and then you transitioned from that to being a doctor. I was like, wow, that's kind of a big change. Most people power through if they're going to do it. How did that come to be?
I can say the spoiler alert is that my executive producer at the theater where I decided to finish the season and go to medical school was as shocked and as dismayed as my parents were when I was in high school and I told them I wanted to go to college and study theater. So, and they said very similar things. What are you doing? You'll never work. That's crazy. Anyway, so I actually studied theater in my undergrad program. I got my bachelor's, but it's a fine arts bachelor's in theater. And when I finished, I was lucky enough to go straight into working in that field. I was working in television and I was working mostly in theaters, but that's a very itinerant lifestyle. So I worked in Wichita, Kansas, and Los Angeles, and Austin, and Seattle, and all of those places. And one of the opportunities that I got was to earn my union card. In theater, that is the Actors Equity, and it's for actors and stage managers. And I earned my equity card doing, wait for it, Gilligan's Island, the musical at the Organic Theater in Chicago. And it was an amazing experience. I played Mud Gilligan and I was the assistant stage manager. And I really loved it. And it was a step up professionally because it meant that from then on, all the work I could take was contracted union work with a lot of protections and health insurance. And that felt very grown up and very important, and was very important. Whether or not it was very grown up is a different thing. And eventually I got hired at an improv theater in Chicago called Second City, that some of your listeners may have heard of. It's an improv theater that gives rise to Saturday Night Live, and some very cool people have worked there who are super famous now. I am not one of them, but I met a couple of them and worked with them. And it was a great experience. I was there for a couple of seasons, but somewhere in there, I realized there was not much of a better job that I could get than what I had. So coming from this tradition of like, you have your job, but you're looking for the job one or two ahead, and you're always, where do I go next? What should I be doing? How do I move forward? How do I climb the ladder? I kind of looked around and realized like, oh, there are lateral moves, but there isn't a lot of up from here. This is it. This is what I've been working towards. I don't know how long I want to do this. And so the more I thought about it, the more I realized there were some pieces of this experience that didn't feel like a good long-term fit, that I felt grateful and amazed to have gotten to do all the things that I got to do. But I had also volunteered as an emergency medical technician.
Oh no! Now I've lost you. See a couple chats here also about having some connection issues. So I don't know if that's on my end or on your end, Dr. G, but at the moment I'm not seeing you. So I'm hoping we're going to get this back going momentarily. Or maybe everyone's listening to both of us right now. One of the mysteries of doing this live. I had not had this issue before. So I'm going to just pop you out and back in and see if that fixes anything. So I'm going to bring Dr. G back on and see if we get things moving again. And it does not look like it. Well, that's unfortunate. So we're going to have to just pause here for a second, and hopefully we're going to get Dr. G back in. Yeah, in fact, she is officially gone now, dropped out of the live stream. So, um, one of the things, and we're going to come back to this, but Dr. G was just talking about this idea of climbing the ladder and how she was always looking for what's the next thing, and found herself in this place of, I look around and I said, there's nowhere up from here where she was in the improv field, but there was just a bunch of lateral moves. And I think this is something that a lot of professional people find themselves in a similar position. At some point, they say, well, maybe there's up, there's almost always more climbing you could do, but it's a question of, do you want to continue to do that? And if you find yourself in a place where you no longer want to continue to climb and there's just lateral moves, it begs this question, is this what I want to be doing? Do I want to continue doing this? I know for me, I faced that very exact same question when I was working at Apple. I no longer was trying to climb up. There were lateral moves, but I had to ask myself this question: do I want to do this for the next 10, 15, 20 years of my working career? Or is there something else I want to do? So obviously, Dr. G went on to medical school. That's something that she did as a part of her transition, but it's an important question to come to. All right. I was kind of hoping that she would be able to pop back in here, but I am not seeing her in the live stream yet. Oh, and just as I say that, she is back on. So let's see.
Hi.
Hi, you're back with us.
Yeah, so as you might be able to tell from the screen, I'm back in on my phone. I'm not entirely sure why, but my computer decided no.
That's all right. We can hear you loud and clear. So we lost you somewhere around the point of climbing the ladder and just, questioning, is this what I want to continue doing?
And so, and I can't really talk about improv theater and then say, oh no, my internet doesn't work. So we improv. What I realized was that as much as this was really exciting and lucky, there was more that I wanted to do and more that I wanted to solve. And I had volunteered right after college as an emergency medical technician for some time. And I loved it. I loved being there when people needed help, being able to give service in that way. So I called a friend of mine who was a paramedic, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about becoming a paramedic. What do you think? And he said, I think you'd be a terrible paramedic. And I was so sad. I was like, oh my gosh, why? And he said, I've run calls with you when you were an EMT, and you're always trying to fix the system. You're always trying to change something, figure out how we could have a better protocol. He's like, just be a doctor. And I said, I'm sure I'm too old to be a doctor. I was 25. So obviously I was ancient. His suggestion stuck with me long enough that eventually one Monday when we were dark at the theater, I called Northwestern's medical school and I said, hey, I'm thinking about applying to medical school. What's required? And this woman said, a bachelor's. This is before the internet, mind you. So this was really the way to get my question answered. And she said, a bachelor's. And I said, in what? Imagining that she would say biology or science. And she said, college. And I said, I totally have one of those.
Oh, that's great. Well, so I know obviously you went on to become a doctor. And then one of the things that at some point, I like the way you articulated this in the past, is that intrigued you is the gap between recovering from illness and being well, and what was in that gap and how you can actually be well and cultivate that well-being. So I'd love to hear you share a little bit of that.
When I was in practice after residency, maybe 5 years, I started to realize that I had been trained to help people recover, but not actually get all the way to feeling vibrant and thriving. Mm-hmm. And so I did what I'd been trained to do, which is I looked at the medical literature and said, what is that gap? And the medical literature calls that gap patient resilience, which sounds a little bit like a cop-out on the part of doctors. But I said, okay, if that's true, what does that mean? And when 15 years ago, you dove into the research on resilience, what you found was a lot on folks with bad PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and people with severe mental illness, and not a lot else. There was at the time still this belief that resilience is just a character trait. You're either born with it or you're not, and you're stuck wherever you were born. And so I started to look into growth mindset literature and do some research of my own. And what we discovered was two really interesting things. One, it's not a character trait. It's not like your eye color and it just is what it is. Resilience is a series of skills. And skills was great news to me because anybody can learn skills. People may already have some of those, which is what leads us to our belief that you just have it or you don't. But anybody can get more. Mm-hmm. The other thing we learned is that resilience is not only something you can learn more of, it's a growth commodity, which means the flip side of you can gain more of it is in certain situations you lose some. So it makes sense that the people that I was taking care of who were living with chronic illness or had had a bad injury or a big life event had less resilience than they had at other points in their life. Knowing that this can go down allows us to approach it differently. Instead of just assuming wherever you are, or it can only go up from there, like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Actually, what doesn't kill you sometimes makes you miserable. And it explained something for me that I had been struggling with since medical school. When I was in med school in the late 90s, our professors were fond of saying, stress is the new smoking. Tell your patients to avoid it at all costs. And then at the end of class, they would make all these announcements. You should also be in 3 research projects and leading a special interest group. And don't forget to exercise and take care of your relationships with your family. And they just piled on the stress. And I thought, are they trying to kill us? Or is there something that's not quite right about this message that stress is the new smoking and you should just avoid it? And this research that I did around resilience and how we help people, and let me just define that really quickly. Resilience is the ability to navigate change and come through it more the kind of person you want to be. So if the goal is to navigate change, and by the way, neurochemically, all change is stressful, even the good stuff, then you can't just avoid stress. It's not like smoking, and you can just swear off of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, so talk to us then. One of the things you've said is that stress is not a toxin, it's a tool. And I think that's what you're alluding to. And that's even to some extent what the people in medical school were doing. It's like, hey, we're stressing you intentionally. And you're using that as a tool for growth. But talk to us about that, and then talk to how resilience fits in there in order to kind of help complete that picture.
So stress is a tool, like exercise is a tool. And it's a good analogy because, first of all, they both suck, right? For most of us, both of those things are terrible, both exercise and stress. But stress builds resilience and mental health in the same way that exercise builds physical fitness, meaning you can't get more without it. If I told you that walking up one flight of stairs as a healthy person, I got kind of winded, you might be too nice to say it, but you know what I need to do? I got to walk up more stairs. If I want to be able to have more accomplishments or relationships or opportunities or experiences in my life, those are all going to be stressful because all change from the status quo is stressful. So what I need to be able to be resilient enough to accomplish and enjoy those things is I have to deal with stress. I need to practice. I need to work out and level up. Now, it doesn't mean I should train injured. So if you are currently experiencing the negative effects of stress, as so many people are, you also need the recovery part. But then to get all the way to well-being, meaning to get all the way to the life you actually want, you're going to have to train up, because getting to the life you want will include stress. You can't avoid your way there.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about, as an individual, how you exercise yourself in that way, how you have an appropriate amount of stress, but then also as a leader, if you're a leader of an organization, right? Think back to your med school teachers or professors who are stressing you as students, right? And as a leader, at some point, there's an appropriate amount of stress that you put on the people on your team or the people that you're leading. How do you think about that as a leader, and how do you think about that as an individual?
So as an individual, there are really 3 steps. When you encounter a stressor or another stressor, one that captures your attention, the first step is I want you to have some empathy for yourself. Please stop telling yourself, well, if I was yes, it would. Stress, our brains have to all change because our brains
Technology is not our friend today, as you can tell, but I'm assuming that Dr. G is going to be back. Getting closer. Here we go. We're just losing you a little bit, so I'm hoping you're coming back in. Nope. Oh, unfortunate. We're right at the crux of how to take advantage of stress and use that as a growth tool rather than as something that holds you back. So I'm hoping we're going to get Dr. G back in here in a second so that we can hear her thoughts on that. Oh no, nope, lost her again entirely. Well, so one of the things, and I'm going to follow up on this when she comes back in, but certainly there's the question of how do you respond to stressors in your life, and I think that most of us want to avoid stress, right? We want to avoid the things that are not going well in life, avoid conflicts, difficult conversations, things that are a project that may not be going as well as you'd like it to be. I've learned from my own experience, and I see this time and again with my clients, when you avoid something, it doesn't go away. I think we all know that, right? So the question is, how do you lean into it, build the resilience so that you can tolerate the stress of the situation, but then also navigate it, learn to navigate it. And I think that's one of the things that I'm hoping we're going to uncover as we get to talk to Dr. G about this, because it's your ability to navigate stress and navigate difficult conversations that allows you to move forward. So, all right, here we go. Back again.
Hi.
All right, third time's a charm. Hey, by the way, you were referring to improv earlier. I'm the one doing the improv here. When
you are, you're nearly going to have to pull out your tap shoes and start doing a little soft shoe for us. So
the three
first step,
tools that you can
empathy, right? Yeah. Second, for yourself, this is hard. Second step is figure out what kind of a stressor is this? Is it useful? It's helping you navigate towards a change that you do want in your life. Mm-hmm. Is it unavoidable? Like something bad has happened to someone you care about, you have a bad diagnosis, you get a parking ticket. Is it unavoidable? If it fits into neither of those categories, if it turns out it is useless and avoidable, walk away from it. Set a boundary and walk away. But if you're dealing with a useful or unavoidable stressor, or one that is both, because that's totally possible, then step 3, reverse engineer that stress. And here's what I mean. Figure out, through this stressor, through dealing with it, a bad diagnosis, a new job, an adoption that's going through, whatever it is, what's the kind of person you want to be? And then every time you make a choice, or every time you feel yourself kind of losing it from stress, remind yourself, what's the kind of person I wanted to be through this? And what's a choice I can make that gets me closer to that? Mm-hmm. Forgive yourself when you mess it up. You will. But you can keep using that as your compass to navigate this change, because that is what resilience is. It is navigating change and coming through it closer to the life you want.
So brilliant. I'd love to hear you then take that, and maybe it's those same 3, and maybe it's a different 3 steps, but how as a leader would you be doing that when you're responsible, not just for yourself, but you're also leading others through a change or through a stress?
It is different for leaders because leaders can't make choices for individuals. Mm-hmm. We wish we could, but we cannot. So since that's the case, the first thing I will say the empathy step is the same, because leaders have, in the companies that I've worked with, overwhelmingly bought into a myth, which is stress is toxic. And if you're causing stress in someone's life, you're the villain. That is not the case. If you are causing stress in someone's life, it should be intentional and measured. Think of yourself like the coach of an elite team. You don't want to run anyone who is limping. You don't want to push them past their boundaries, but you also want to make them uncomfortable enough to grow and learn new things. Mm-hmm. You want to help them achieve the mission of the team. So being mission oriented is the second step. Figuring out why am I introducing or emphasizing this stressor? Like you have a regulatory issue coming up. We have to have certain paperwork filed to keep our accreditation, to do the work we do and serve our mission. That's high stress. It must be done. You cannot serve your mission without it. So first, have empathy for yourself. And that means, okay, causing stress in people's lives is a part of leadership. The second is make sure that the stressor is aligned to your mission. Mm-hmm. And then the third, as I said, is to be intentional about and measured about the stress you apply and how much. And that really means knowing your people well enough, or asking the people who work just under you to know their people well enough to see not just the red flags of overwhelm, but the yellow flags, the early warning signs that they're starting to play injured.
Yeah. So where do you see the biggest challenge for people, or where did the leaders that you've worked with fall down in that process?
Right at the beginning. The
Mhm.
leaders that I work with really believe that if they've done a great job creating relationship and building trust, then when they announce change, no one will be bothered by it.
Hmm.
That it is
Oh no, this is just challenge after challenge today. um, but in the pause here, we'll see how long until Dr. G is able to join us back here. But right at the beginning, right, is, hey, if I've done a good job, that change should be easy and people should come in line, that it shouldn't be stressful for other people. And I think that's, there's this, all of us would love to avoid stress, right? For so long, we've been told that stress is a bad thing. We try to avoid it for ourselves. We try to avoid it and help other people avoid it in our organizations. I'm going to just take Dr. G off the screen there for a second while we're trying to get that connection sorted out. But it's that challenge of becoming okay and relearning this old belief that stress is a bad thing, right? That's been so drilled into us, and certainly long-term chronic high levels of stress can have physical implications. We know that, right? Just like you wouldn't go from zero to running a marathon, it's the same kind of thing. You got to train up for it. But it's a willingness to actually do the training and to take the steps. And I think that's what Dr. G was just about to get into there, is his willingness to say, how do I actually start to tolerate the stress and the discomfort in myself? Not only am I causing other people stress, but it's uncomfortable for me to be creating stress for other people. And I think that's one of the places, when she said right at the beginning is where people fall down, it's in that spot. It's in this belief that stress is bad and I should avoid it and I shouldn't be causing other people stress, or if they are stressed, I'm doing something wrong. I think that there's some opportunity in that. So it looks like we may be getting Dr. G to come back here. In fact, third time was not the charm. Hopefully fourth time will come in. Let's just see if we've got her on the stream here. Trying, we got the little spinning circle. So but while we're doing that, I do want to just go back to the individual piece, because I think we certainly have a good number of people listening who are leaders and in leadership positions, but we also have individuals listening who are just managing themselves and have to manage their own way through difficult and stressful situations. And so number one is that empathy, right? Just having some compassion for yourself, that of course this is difficult and that's okay. It's part of the human experience. Everyone goes through difficult things. Number two is making sure that what you're doing is aligned to something that's important to you, that it is both important and I forget what the second one that she said. And then number three is to reverse engineer it, is to come at it with the end in mind. If I've navigated this successfully, what will I have done? What will it feel like? How will I know that I feel good about having navigated the situation? And then take steps that move you in that direction. I think one of the things that's important to add on into the mix here is to recognize that you're not always going to do it perfectly. And in fact, Dr. G said this, and this is again where empathy and understanding come in, that not everything you do is going to go the way you want it to. And being okay with that. In my own personal experience, one of my coaches said to me, you have to be willing to hear no. When you come up with a new idea and you're ready to put it out there and to share it with people, you have to be willing to hear no, that it doesn't work, that it doesn't resonate, that nobody really is interested in it. And that was challenging for me as a high achiever, as somebody who always wants to be right. I always want to have everything all lined up and perfect before I try it. And so this simple idea of being willing to hear a no, of being willing to get it wrong and learning from that was very powerful for me in breaking through my own barriers around trying to get it perfect. And in a way, it's tolerating stress. It's a willingness to do something that I don't know if it's going to go as well as I expect it to. I don't know, I don't know if other people it's going to resonate with other people, but I'm willing to put it out there because I'm learning in the process. And so there's something very valuable and powerful about that. All right. Well, we usually go for about 30 minutes here, and we are coming up on that time, and we've just been having all sorts of issues with Dr. G's connections. So my apologies for those of you who have listening. I hope you have gotten something out of this, and I'm going to see if I can find a way to connect with Dr. G and pull some excerpts out of this and maybe get the rest of some of this material that I can share with you. Because as you can tell from if you've listened this long, there's been some really powerful, great things that she's got to share. And I want to make sure that you get those in your hands. So I'll be sharing some information about how you can get that. But for now, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you for joining. We do this live every week on Wednesdays at noon, and we have different leaders every time talking about their expertise, but also a little bit of their story, which I hope you got to appreciate that also for Dr. G. So thanks for joining, and hope to see you again next time.